breaking news at the top of the hour. The world is going to end. But we already knew that. Whether it be in hundreds of millions of years when the sun blows up and destroys the earth, or the second coming before that, the world in general knows that the world is ending. And as we come to the end of the liturgical year, the Church reminds us with a certain wisdom of these facts. The facts that this world isn't the end. That this world is passing. And oftentimes we can get caught up in, well, when's that going to happen? And throughout history, there's been a fascination with the end of the world. When is it happening? What are the things that we see in the Bible and the signs that are happening that will tell us the exact date when the world is about to end? There have been a number of cults over the past years, especially in the past century. The world was supposed to end in 1975, and then it didn't end, so I had to push it forward to 2000. And year 2000 came, and the world didn't end, and 2025, and we're in 2025 right now. And well, hopefully we still have a month and a half left or so. So if we make it through 2025, it's going to get pushed back to 2050. But sometimes we can be so focused on the things that are going on around us, these questions, these wondering when we see a world that's so agitated, such as the world that we're living in, we can forget that each and every one of us is only a moment away from that veil being removed, from entering into eternity. And we can ask ourselves, is this just some sort of morbidity that we're trying to kind of guilt trip ourselves into thinking, well, the world's going to end or I'm going to die, so I better be good, and enter into some sort of anxiety about this? Or is there a deep wisdom that the Church is offering us? Is it in contemplating the end of the world and the end of our lives that we can actually gain wisdom about how to live each day? And I think that's what the Church is trying to offer us. I think that's what Jesus is trying to teach us. Not so that we live in this fear of death, but so that the awareness of death will give us the strength and the clarity to live life truly. And it's interesting in the thought experiments that have been done throughout the ages about immortalizing ourselves on this earth. And we hear about that from a scientific perspective. There's those who are positing that perhaps in our lifetimes we'll see people who won't die because we'll be able to freeze our genes and we'll download our brains onto a computer. It's interesting throughout literary history, the different takes on that. And spoiler alert, none of them end well. Every single one of the experiments, it's not a good thing to live this life as it is forever. One of the recent ones was a remake of Frankenstein. It's always dangerous to talk about movies from the pulpit because people say, "Father, you watched that?" Or, "Father, I watched that. It was a terrible movie. What are you talking about?" Or, "I didn't get what you were saying about that." So, always kind of dangerous. Don't watch it with kids. It's super intense. You'll find it on Netflix. I'm not recommending or endorsing it. Just saying I saw it and I pulled some things out of it. So we have this classic story, the story of Victor Frankenstein who wants to create immortal life. A person who won't die. And he creates this person that can't die, and it's the battle between this wanting to live forever and realizing how truly terrible that is if you're living it on this earth. If you're living it without the light of the resurrection, without what Jesus brings to us. And we see what it does to Victor Frankenstein. It destroys him. It destroys all of his relationships in this incessant search for something that we're not meant to grasp onto that tightly. And at the end, there's I won't give too many spoilers. There's a beautiful phrase that this person that he has helped to create, when he realizes what life is, he says, now I have no choice but to live. He had been living just a physical life, but now he recognized that he needed to learn how to live a true life. And I think that's the question for each one of us. How often have we just been living a physical life, and we haven't actually taken the step into living a real life, a life focused on eternity? The second point, as we receive this gift of life, I would propose to you the joy of limitation. As we discover that life is not a possession to be grasped, but a gift to be received. The most precious and the greatest things in our life are things that are passing. Things that we know in some moment will end. Relationships, great moments, events. They're all things that are passing. How often have we had the opportunity to maybe watch a sunset with someone special? And there's a part of us that would love to freeze that moment, to have this moment in time be everything, to not have to go forward in that. And yet at the same time, we're so distracted that within a half hour, it would be like, son, go down. Go, finish. The limitation of things helps us to appreciate them. And life is no different. Pope Benedict wrote a beautiful encyclical on hope, Spe Salvi. Very worthwhile read to go back to that. And he also wrote a lesser-known book on eschatology. Eschatology is one of these SAT words that refers to the end things, heaven and hell and purgatory and the end of life. All of these kind of heavy words that sometimes we throw around lightly, but we never really want to have deep conversations around them, but that are so important. And what he says is that our Christian hope, the realization that we are mortal, the realization that this life is limited, leads us to this hope in the resurrection and leads us to give meaning to our sufferings. And he says, it is not by sidestepping or fleeing from suffering that we are healed, but rather by our capacity for accepting it, maturing through it, and finding meaning through union with Christ. So these limitations bring us face to face with the need to allow hope to enter into our lives. And again, I think oftentimes focusing just on the end of the world and when it's going to happen can be a distraction tactic from the enemy. Recognizing that any given moment, or just moments, from meeting our Maker, from that veil being lifted from our eyes. So oftentimes we'll ask ourselves, well, will the end come? Will the second coming of Jesus, will this happen during my lifetime? I don't know. I'm not going to give you a date. What I do know is that in our lifetimes, we will go to meet our Maker. 100% guaranteed. I don't know what the percentages are. I don't know if someone's betting on that in the little bet kiosks that are around the city. If, end times, when are they coming? There are certain moments of our recent history that people probably said, yeah, it's probably pretty close. But we know that our life is limited. And oftentimes we walk through this life thinking that we're walking on this very, very solid ground and that nothing is going to happen and that I have so long to live. But I think the image for our life is the image of a tightrope walker. That's really what we're living. We're living in this little space of time, this tiny cord that's stretched up high. And we're walking from one place to another. And what surrounds us is all of these dangers that oftentimes we don't recognize. But I think there are 5 lessons that we can learn from the tightrope walker. The first is look where you're going, not down at your feet. The very beginning when they teach you how to high wire walk. I'm not an expert, I've never done it. I looked it up on ChatGPT, so. They teach you not to look at the wire or the abyss down below you. They tell you to focus on your destination, where you want to go. For us as Christians, that's looking across that wire, looking across our lives, and seeing that Jesus is at the other end. Focusing on him like St. Peter when he was walking on the water. As long as his eyes were fixed on Jesus, he could walk on water. The second, make small corrections, not big ones. This isn't referring to conversion, but just these little changes that we can make in our lives. Sometimes we need those big changes of direction. We need to turn around and start walking towards Jesus. But once we're doing that, it's oftentimes these small little adjustments that we need to make along the path. Sometimes it's adding in a habit of prayer. Sometimes it's returning to confession. Sometimes it's meeting with some friends who help me to move forward in my faith. So these small corrections. And the third one is very interesting. The pole is for balance, not for holding on to. The pole that the tightrope walkers use to walk is a means for balance. And if you try and hold on to it and hang on to it as if it were sustaining you, you're obviously going to fall off. And all of the gifts that we've been given, all of the material gifts, all of our talents, everything that is not God has been given to us to help us to balance, to help us to walk along this path. But it's never meant to be what sustains us. It only helps us along the path. It's not the goal of the path. Fourth, the fear doesn't disappear. You just get better at walking with it. I think that's beautiful. That in our lives, as Christians, as we face the challenges in the world around us, and as we face the fact of our own mortality, we're going to feel fear. But we'll get used to walking with it. Because we get used to walking, but also because of the one we're walking towards and the one we're walking with, because of Jesus' presence. And third, stop when you need to. If you start to feel out of balance, the worst thing you can do is to try and run to the other end. Just slow down, regain your balance, take a deep breath, and then take the next step. So in our Christian life, in the readings today as we close this liturgical year, the church is inviting us to vigilance, not to anxiety. And this vigilance means the recognition that everything we do every single day is a step towards eternity. The fact that our lives are limited invites us to take steps today, not to wait and put off till tomorrow what we can do today. And there's that question that I think I've asked in a couple of homilies. Who wants to go to heaven? Everybody raises their hand. Who wants to go today? Well, that's a tougher question. But if you knew that you were going to heaven today, if you knew that the second coming was coming today, how would your life be different? What are the important things that you're putting off? And I think some of those things are around the following topics. To live in the light of eternity means forgive now, not later, because we may not have later. Who is that person? Who are those people that you're waiting to forgive, that you're waiting for them to take the first step? You know, we're coming up to the holiday seasons, and all of the family dramas come back out, whether it be at Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas or around those times. How often surrounding that is just a step in forgiveness. Express love today, not tomorrow, because tomorrow is not guaranteed. How often there are people in our lives that we take for granted until it's too late. Who am I waiting to express affection towards? Maybe an elderly grandparent or parent. Someone who's sick that I keep putting off. Next week I'll give them a call. Or next week I'll go and visit them. Living in the light of eternity means taking a step today towards that. To pursue what truly matters, releasing our grip on what is passing away. And to see each and every person around us as a companion in this way towards heaven, towards eternity. Finally, the end times are not something distant, reserved for some far-off cosmic drama. They begin now, in your life and in mine. Every moment is eschatological. Every moment brings us closer to our final encounter with the Lord. Let's not live like Victor Frankenstein, trying to grasp onto an immortal life in this lifetime. Let us live as Pope Benedict invited us, saying that those who have hope live differently. Let's walk the tightrope of life with skill and focus. Let us live each day as the gift that it is, loving urgently, forgiving freely, and watching expectantly for the coming of the Lord.